The Marlin 1895 SBL in 4570 Government is the first rifle out of the gate since Marlin was acquired by Ruger, and after using one for several weeks and taking it hunting, we are breathing a huge sigh of relief. Ruger has done right by the beloved brand. And not only has Ruger rescued Marlin from the wreckage of the Remington bankruptcy, but based on what we've seen so far, it is making the best lever actions in Marlin's history. Put simply, Ruger has successfully reincarnated Marlin as a modern gun company. Keep watching for an in-depth review. Model 1895 upgrades. While Marlin will continue to exist as a standalone entity, there's no doubt that Ruger has put its mark on the rifle. Visually, you see this in several places. There's the prominent Marlin, Mayodan, North Carolina, USA along the barrel. Mayodan is the factory site where Ruger makes its AR rifles and other firearms. The serial numbers start with RM for Ruger Made, though they also could stand for Revived Marlin. The proof mark on the barrel has an R in it. Also, the trademark Marlin bullseye on the underside of the stock is Ruger Red, though Marlin history buffs know that red was the original Marlin color, so actually this is a return to the company's roots. From an aesthetic standpoint, all the engraved text is attractive and well executed. In fact, in terms of visual impact, these new 1895s are among the best-looking Marlins ever made. But let's get back to the upgrades for the moment. Initially, Ruger has done some great things to improve how the Marlins are built. Marlin 1895 SBL manufacturing improvements. Marlin's engineers have completed the company's transition from an old-time rifle maker to a thoroughly modern manufacturer, and the quality of these rifles reflects that. For example, when Marlin now cuts the chambers on the model 1895, it does so in just 2 passes. Previously, chambering these lever guns required several machining cuts. This is significant because every time you make a cut, you introduce a certain amount of tolerance slop. The more passes, the more those tolerances can stack, potentially degrading accuracy and performance. These new chambers are much more precise. For the first time, Marlin is cutting some parts via wire EDM. This advanced type of machining uses a thin electrically charged wire that makes exact and smooth cuts. The notches on the hammer that engage the sear are EDM cut, resulting in a very crisp trigger break with none of the grit, creep, and over-travel that is often found on lever-action rifles. Marlin is also heat-treating the forged stainless steel receivers before machining them. It is cheaper to machine the pieces and heat-treat them after. It is easier to cut the metal prior to the process, but heat treating relieves stress on the metal, potentially causing it to alter shape. If the dimensions change after you've machined the metal, you can get warping and tolerance stacking again. By heat treating first, Marlin can hold these guns to much tighter specs. Tight metalwork fit and finish. One only needs to look at the fit between the trigger guard plate and receiver on these new Marlins to observe these tighter tolerances. We own about a dozen Marlin lever actions, and invariably there is a noticeable and sometimes inconsistent gap where the trigger guard plate fits into the bottom of the receiver. This is one of those connections that required hand fitting and filing by Marlin gunmakers in the past. On the new 1895 SBL and on the other Ruger-made Marlins we've inspected, the fit between those pieces is nearly perfect. While this is visually pleasing, having pieces that fit this way also translate to a rifle that runs better and more reliably. Older Marlins often needed a shim between the barrel and receiver to get them to time correctly. Those shims are like very thin washers that come in different thicknesses. No more. The precise machining on the barrel and receiver allows them to be screwed together, be torqued to spec, and line up perfectly. To augment the rifle's visual flair, Marlin nickel-plated both the loading gate spring and the bolt, which they adorned with a spiral fluting pattern. Elegant laminate stocks. Marlin did a great job upgrading the stock on the model 1895 SBL as well. The black and gray color scheme has been featured on Marlin lever guns for many years now, but as with the metalwork, the stocks on the new rifles are much improved. The laser-cut checkering is noticeably more elegant. The diamonds are pointed up nicely, the pattern features more lines per inch compared to my North Haven-made rifles, and the finish on the wood is better. And on the forend, the cuts that create the diamonds run parallel with the pattern's border, which is a nice touch and a sign of quality craftsmanship. When checkering was done by hand by stock makers who knew their trade, this was standard, but sadly, such attention to detail has become scarce. The checkering on our older factory guns appears clunky by comparison. The forend is slightly trimmer on the new rifles, and Marlin has improved the way the wood fits into the metal forend tip where the front swivel stud is located. On a couple of our 1895s, for instance, the forend measures 1.75 inches at its widest point versus 1.68 inches on the new SBL. On these rifles, Marlin decided to forego grip caps on the stock. Instead, it features a sharp and well-defined laser engraved image of the Marlin horse and rider logo, eliminating cracked wood. One frequent complaint about the Remington-made Marlins was that the stocks would chip and crack where they came in contact with the receiver. This was another issue caused by tolerance slop. One way Remington tried to compensate for this was to increase the thickness of the forend in an effort to make the wood stronger. They would also put a slave stock on the rifles when they proofed them with overpowered loads because the standard stocks were prone to getting damaged by the stout test rounds. Marlin says the more exacting fit between the stock and receiver has corrected this issue, and as a sign of their confidence with these new 1895s, they are proofing them with the stocks they ship with. Marlin 1895 SBL at the range. These new Marlins are more than just pretty faces, however. They run as nicely as they look. As part of our evaluation, we put more than half a dozen different 45-70 factory loads through the rifle, including ammo from Horn 80, Remington, Federal, Black Hills Ammunition, Barnes, Winchester, and Buffalo Bore. The rifle has cycled them all with no issues whatsoever. For accuracy work, we focused on Horn 80's 325 grain Lever Evolution round, which is the load we also used on our Mayodan hunt in Texas. 3-shot groups with the rifle hovered around 1 inch, some slightly smaller, others a tad bigger. For a lever gun, this is excellent performance, and we were impressed by the clockwork consistency of the groups. From the rifle's 19-inch barrel, the bullets exited at 1925 FPS. One challenge while shooting groups was a trigger pull weight of the rifle. We mentioned that the trigger is consistent and crisp, which it is, but the trigger on ours breaks at 6 pounds 7 ounces, which is a bit heavier than we would prefer. On a lever gun like this, it would be good to see the trigger break at 5 to 5.5 pounds. Fast handling 45-70. We performed numerous offhand drills with the rifle as well and liked how it handled. Thanks to its heft, scoped and empty, our weighs 8 pounds 10 ounces. The 1895 SBL manages the recoil of the 45-70 nicely. Ringing steel gongs at 100 yards in quick succession is this Marlin's happy place. We were able to recover our sight picture quickly and place accurate follow-up shots at a brisk clip. The broad and cushy recoil pad helps with this. It distributes the force of the recoil over a wide surface area and keeps the stock anchored in place on the shoulder. The finger lever, which is the correct name for the lever loop, is polished with the sharp edges buffed off. It's extremely comfortable to manipulate with bare hands. There's no reason to wrap the loop with leather or paracord unless you really just dig that look. This touch is another testament to how the new Marlin 1895 SBL is being manufactured. The polishing gives the receiver a bright, shiny look, perhaps not the best finish for stealth in the field, but it is eye-catching. It is possible to have too much of a good thing, however, and the receiver on our rifle was over-polished and rounded out the lines on the flats of the sides. As the Marlin workers gain experience with the process, we're sure they'll figure out how to polish the metal without losing the definition of metal. What to expect next? Marlin picked the model 1895 SBL for its debut for 2 simple reasons. 1, it is a gorgeous-looking rifle. 2, it was the top seller when the company was owned by Remington. Very soon, however, you can expect to see more offerings from the RUGER Marlin crew. The company is being tight-lipped about this, but it is safe to say that in 2022, we'll see blued metal on these rifles as well as walnut stocks. You can also expect the return of the Marlin Model 1894 as well as the Marlin Model 336. We're fortunate that RUGER stepped in to prevent a gloomy fate from befalling Marlin. And even more lucky that they are building such rock-solid rifles bearing the Marlin name. MSRP of this gun is at $2,000. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you another time.